when a caterpillar becomes a butterfly, and this might sound a little woo-woo, they go through a transformation entirely. That butterfly will never be a caterpillar ever again. And I think we as men need to understand when we reach levels of growth, that former self has died.
Hey, F3 Omaha, welcome back to another edition of Q-Source TV, where we explore the manual of virtuous leadership, or Q-Source. This week's prayer comes from the book of James, chapter 1, verse 14. But each person is tempted when they are dragged away by their own evil desire and enticed. Then, after desire has conceived, it gives birth to sin. And sin, when it is full grown, gives birth to death. Pretty intense words coming out of the book of James this morning. Actually ties really well into our TWP principle, practice, or philosophy, which is quadrant 1.4, Jester, the temptation of the flesh that hinders acceleration. And I don't know if I needed to hear a lot of what was in this chapter. I needed to learn a lot, but my highlighter was working overtime. I almost had to go through two highlighters, all the great points that were found in this chapter. Got a few of them here to highlight. The first one, pride is the king of all jesters. It is insidious. Ain't that the truth? Number two, we were not born to stumble. We are led to do so. We are not what we do, but what we were intended to be. And what I've discovered being very intentional, especially over the last 30 days or so, getting into the Bible and including the prayer at the top of Q-Source TV, but also even going further in my learnings of the Bible, is that that's exactly what it talks about quite a bit there in the good book, especially with Jesus and God's help and their example. We can be what we were intended to be. I love that line there. The next one has to do with moral relativism. I wanted to look up what this meant, so I did a Grok search, and Grok defines it as the view that moral truths and values are not absolute, but they depend on context, culture, or individual perspective. And basically what I got out of the chapter on moral relativism is you either got morals and you got ethics and you have values, or you don't. It's not, oh, I did all these good deeds, so now I get to cheat a little bit on my morals and values and ethics. You either got them and you believe in them and you practice them and you try to avoid sin and it taking you away or being enticed away from those values, or you don't. But as far as this bargaining deal, that's not really in the cards. Of course, we're going to sin. Of course, we're going to stumble. But if you're consciously doing it consistently and using moral relativism to justify it, I don't really think that's what was intended, and that's where the jester's coming into play, and probably lying to yourself there. Number 4, this is a great line. He will have become a mascot who dances with his jester in the dark because he lacks the strength to fight him in the light. And this is something that I was definitely guilty of a lot more in the past. And now that I've identified my jester and I'm more cognizant, it's more top of mind, I have done a lot better job of fighting that guy off. Dark or light, doesn't matter. I'm continuously fighting him off and recognizing when the fight is coming and being prepared to take it on. So, man, I'm just going to read that one more time. He will become a mascot who dances with his jester in the dark because he lacks the strength to fight him in the light. I love that line. And then finally, point number 5. I don't know who wrote this book. Just kidding. Shout out to Dredd. But he always seems to end each chapter with a highlighted remark or sentence. And this chapter is no different. While I can never out-paddle my jester, the faster my boat is accelerating through the water, the harder it is for him to capsize it. And again, same thing. Once you've identified your jester, you're able to kind of stay, hopefully, a step ahead of it and learn the steps, or at least start to learn more about yourself so that you can have the strength to overcome whatever that is and start to see the signs from a mile away so that you can always stay a step ahead of it. I can't emphasize Q Source enough. The book itself, but also going to a beatdown. I'm obviously biased towards the Crucible on Wednesdays, 5:15, but there's Q Source all over Omaha every day of the week almost. So be sure to check the schedule and get yourself out to a Q Source.
The number one rule in creating success is to show up, to merely just show up.
As for my personal experience with Jester and F3, I really did a lot of self-reflection on this chapter and on this topic. Right away, you're going to ask yourself the question, what is my Jester? And I think it is very important to identify what it is. But for me, I wanted to make sure that it truly was what the chapter talked about and what the definition of what a Jester is, which is the temptation of the flesh that hinders acceleration. I quickly eliminated some hobbies or some vices that I have that I don't really think fit the bill when it comes to that definition, especially when you look into the 5 ways that the Jester tries to manipulate you and lie to you. So I quickly eliminated those, and I still didn't have the answer. And I kept thinking of things like anger, and then I would try and break it. Like in coding, in IT, you write code, and then you have someone come in and they test against it to try and break it. So I was continually trying to break any Jester that I came up with until I finally found the one. And for me, my Jester is selfishness. Everything that has caused problems in my life, especially since I've been married, especially since I've had children and a family, can be tied back to selfishness. And what F3 has helped me do, ironically, F3 maybe made me a little more selfish in terms of, I used to think, okay, I worked out, I'm trying to get out there 5-6 times a week. It's good for my health. It's good for my psyche. I love hanging out in the gloom. I love going to cafeteria. But then I would come home, and by Thursday or Friday of that week, I would just be a zombie for my family. I might be short with them. I might not give them all the energy that they need or the attention that they need. And again, I was being selfish. It was something that was really good for me, but I had to learn to take it in moderation, or get to bed even earlier, or take care of my body, or at least listen to my body and know when I needed to take a fart sec. And I think here in Omaha, we call it a smart sec. But it was really coming to terms with even something as good as working out and staying fit and having those deep male relationships and feeling good about myself from 5 to 6:30 in the morning. Even something as good as that, you can be selfish with it. And if you don't keep selfishness or your Jester, whatever it is for you, in check, and you're prepared to deal with it, and you see the signs of it, then it can hinder your acceleration, as the definition says, but it can have lasting effects on your family. And I mentioned about a month ago, when Charlie Kirk died, that I was going to do a prayer at the top of these Q sources, a reading from the Bible, that hopefully relates to the topic for that week. But what it's done is it's forced me to get into the Bible even more beyond just doing research for what I want it to be for that week. And I've learned a lot about myself through the Bible. But in addition to learning a lot about myself, it's also helped with my family. It's helped my relationship with my M and with my 13-year-old daughter, and also my other 2 daughters as well. But my 13-year-old and I would clash a lot around discipline and around rules. And it was getting to the point where my M was saying, you're going to push her away. She's going to grow up and move out of this house one day, and you don't want to fracture the relationship that you have with her for the rest of her life and the rest of your life. And I pushed back on that. I said, hey, you got to have discipline. You got to have rules around here. But really, the last month or so, there's been a marked change in our family, especially the last 10 days or so. And I want to just read a couple things that I got. One was from my daughter. We got home from a trip to Lincoln, and it was a softball trip, and things didn't go how we wanted. She was a little disappointed in her playing time. But the next morning I found this next to my sink, and I won't read all of it, but I'll read a little bit of it. It says, "Dear Dad, thank you so much for always coming to my games, buying me things and taking me to my games. I love you so, so much, and I'm so glad to have you as a dad. Also, thank you so, so much for wanting to work with me for hitting." And then she goes on to say a couple more things. And then my wife recently, I wrote her an email that actually I learned from Charlie Kirk, if I can find it. I don't have it with me, but he basically wrote weekly to his wife 3 things, and I think it was every Saturday, I don't know. But he wrote something he was grateful for, and he asked her how he could help her in their marriage. And then there's a third thing, and I don't have the post-it in front of me, but I started doing that, just started doing that recently. And after my wife read the email that I wrote to her, she wrote this to me. She said, "I am extremely grateful for your renewed commitment to our marriage, family, and most importantly, God. You being a God/faith-focused husband inarguably has the greatest impact on the health of our marriage and family. You waking up focusing on your greatest purpose has directly impacted my health and ability to be a better wife and mother. Your commitment to your purpose as the leader of our family allows me to fulfill my purpose. I truly feel a strong, God-focused husband-father is the key that unlocks the door to healthy, Christ-centered families. A man's greatest burden and blessing is being the key that unlocks that door." And I just want to say from my own experience, I like a lot of evidence. I know faith should be forsaking all in him I trust, or forsaking all in him I trust. Is that right? Anyways, I trust him. Sorry. Forsaking all, I trust him. I knew I'd get the acronym right if I kept trying. That is what faith is, but we're all human. And I can tell you firsthand, the experience of getting into the Bible and really learning more about myself and self-reflecting on my faults and what I need to do to be a better husband and a better father, and walking with God and trying to mimic the life of Jesus to strengthen me to be able to carry out my purpose. It has had a tremendous impact on my life, and I'm super excited for the things to come. But those letters and those emails that I read, they weren't happening 30 days ago, even having been in F3 for a year. They certainly weren't happening before F3. And I just give all the glory to God, and I'm so glad that he's a bigger part of my life now. All right, let's get to this week's Q. L.P.C. We're going to find out what that stands for. He's the current third F and former Combine site Q. His name is Tyson Compton. He's a realtor and entrepreneur, and he joined F3 in June of 2020, over 5 years with F3. He grew up in Kearney, Nebraska. He went to a small Catholic school. They were the Stars. He met his M while on leave from the Marine Corps at Red Lounge. His favorite hobbies are golf, travel, and trying out new restaurants. And he defines a leader as someone who willingly serves a cause and others before themselves, always putting the mission and the team's welfare first. They balance emotional intelligence with steadfast resolve, remaining grounded and decisive through challenge and change. True leadership is not about authority. It's about service, vision, and courage in the face of adversity. As for my personal relationships with L.P.C, the more of these episodes that I do, the more that I realize how many deep relationships I've formed over the past year. I have definitely formed more deep relationships in the last year, 13 months or so, than I had in my entire adult life. And it's really a great feeling to have this many guys that I can count on, and I hope they know they can count on me. My favorite thing about L.P.C is he really knows how to read the room and to read the individual. So you could be at cafeteria, and if you had something very serious going on in your life that you really need some sound advice on, he'll pull you off to the side, or even if you're in a big group, he'll just be one-on-one with you, and he'll give you that serious attention and that real good advice. and he's a great listener, and he knows that, that's kind of a no nonsense conversation. On the other hand, he can spend an entire cafeteria. Him and I have spent an entire cafeteria laughing our asses off and probably being obnoxious and annoying to the rest of the him there, or at least the rest of the customers in the coffee shop. And that can go on for the entire cafeteria. He can also flip a switch. He can have a serious conversation. Then when he knows that, that kind of is done and resolved, he can go back to cracking jokes and being a funny guy. And my favorite thing is that he can do that for you, but he also does it for himself, and he allows you to do it for him. So he can be serious. He can ask for advice, and he knows when a serious conversation is happening. But if there's an opportunity to inject some humor, especially maybe to lighten the load or lighten the mood, he's cognizant of that, and he's not going to get upset or anything like that. And he always laughs at good wit and good humor, even at his own expense. And he loves to dish it out too, which is awesome. So it's a very, I always use this word whenever I give these intros to interviews, but he is a very insightful him. He's got a very interesting perspective on life. He has a lot of life experience being in the Marine Corps. And in this interview, one thing that I was curious about was comparing his life in the Marine Corps with how the boot camp style workouts are, and then the camaraderie and the fellowship of F3. And you're going to get to hear his answer on that and a lot more interesting topics. Can't wait for you to see it.
All right, I'm now joined by L.P.C. How's it going, my man?
Good, man. How you doing?
Real good. Let's just start out. What does L.P.C. mean?
So L.P.C is a acronym that I've heard is used in the Army for boots. It's L.P.C, leather personnel carriers. So obviously in the military you wear leather boots, and there was a couple of Army bubbas in my first beat down. That was what they did at TC ended up, I think, giving me the name. So that's where it kind of came from. I'd never heard it before. It was in the Marine Corps, we just used it. We just used boots, shockingly. Yeah. So
Some more definitions from you. Your PaxNet profile says you're the third F. Tell our audience what that entails for F3 Omaha.
Developing camaraderie through something bigger than ourselves. So like book studies, Q source, even like TNT, like Truth Nugget Thursdays type of stuff. Basically, anytime we're trying to have hosts engaging discussions on topics that breach various subjects beyond the beatdown and cafeteria, people kind of reference me, or hey, ask L.P.C what he thinks or how you'd want to go about it, or what kind of support you might need.
You seem to know a lot about a lot of different topics. I've affectionately called you a walking Wikipedia. Is curiosity your favorite trait?
If there's a superpower, I guess it was the one reason why most teachers hated me growing up is I would ask questions ad nauseum, for better or worse, whether it be to elongate doing work or just truly because I wanted more information all the time.
Have you ever gone too far down a rabbit hole?
Yeah. I mean, I think that is a pendulum that can swing often. So at times you realize, well, this isn't serving me anymore. I can't go any further. Like, I've reached a point of diminishing return at which I care to know any more knowledge, or it's unnecessary information for me to move forward. So you just kind of move on. So I think that's comes with Asian wisdom,
They say curiosity kills the cat. You ever find anything out that scared you? You wish you would have never found out?
Curiosity is something that we should all be striving towards, because if you take everything at face value, I think you can be doing what you appear to be right all the time, and all of a sudden it's been for the wrong cause, right? So I think one of my pastor I was listening to one time was talking about how you could be climbing up a ladder and think you're accelerating or ascending the right mountain, all of a sudden you realize the ladder's on the wrong wall. Well, if you're not asking the right questions, or questions in general, you may never actually get to where you want to go. So for me, I would say that sometimes you can overanalyze or over question, where you actually, paralysis by analysis kind of thing. But, I think it's much easier to act in a quicker manner and then pivot versus continuing to act in the same manner and trying to reverse is a lot harder. So
Similar to your latter example, I heard Charlie Kirk once say, "Speed is only good if you're heading in the right direction."
Yes, yeah. The other analogy too I really like is you're like, well, if I'm going west out of Lincoln, but I'm trying to go to Omaha and all this or Chicago, and all of a sudden you're like, I'm just gonna keep going west until I circle back to get to Omaha or Chicago. It will actually never happen. So you got to be able to turn around at some point and pivot.
As you probably know, co-founder of F3, David Redding, or Dredd, is ex-military. There's a lot of military references in Free to Lead, Q Source, and F3 in general.
Yeah.
How does F3 remind you of your time in the Marine Corps?
I would say the camaraderie aspect of it is really, really healthy. So you're working for a common cause, albeit altruistic in the sense of like, hey, I'm trying to be better, but the group supports individual success. The nice thing about the gloom or the military is one, you're in uniform, you're there voluntarily. And so things are stripped from you for identity purposes in the sense that we're not judging based upon a socioeconomic class, what kind of watch you're wearing or car you're driving. You're there for shared hardship and shared struggle towards a common goal. Those two parallels align very proportionately all the way through. And it allows us to breach the gap between, so many different types of just backgrounds, experiences of people.
How are the two experiences completely different from each other?
In the Marine Corps, I was in the infantry. So our role was about saving lives and taking lives, and always not in that order, right? And that's how we were training. In the Marine Corps, I think it's more of in F3, it's much more of the internal emotional or the internal battle of oneself, of still trying to, die to oneself to be put others first, living through the third F and living third for, kind of like, God, family, country kind of thing. That is very similar. And you're led by certain ideals that you're willing to stand up for and be courageous and speak out about. And then, and understand that not always everybody's going to be with you, but and have the vision as, leader, also as morally driven to do the right thing, even when it's not popular. So there's just different outcomes that may be less severe in terms of mortality.
So F3 is like Marines without guns, basically.
Yeah, Marines without guns and very domesticated.
You tend to wear your heart on your sleeve, and you also like to tell it like it is. I remember you calling me out at cafeteria one time for misrepresenting intermittent fasting. But you do both these things either in a very funny way or with a very caring demeanor, depending on the situation. Has developing deep male friendships always come naturally to you, or is that something you developed in your time with F3?
No, it's been it's always been very paramount in the way I want to conduct myself. I think men shouldering next to other men that are equally valued or have equal values is super important. Kind of the old adage, surround yourself with five people and you'll be the sum of those five people kind of idea carries through in so many different facets and is really applicable in all phases of life, whether it be professionally, personally, spiritually, or intimately in terms of like surroundings of other good marriages and other people that you would be willing to trade places with and stuff like that. So to me, it's been my parents were social and they were very good about having a wide range of friendships, and I saw that as a kind of one of the pillars of their life that bared a lot of fruit. And so that's something that comes natural to me, but also is very rewarding in that sense too. I love bringing people together for various aspects and fun times, as well as providing events and venues and experiences that allow us to use that as a vehicle to just connect.
You've been in F3 for over 5 years. How would you characterize the experience from each year to someone writing your biography? So, like, year one is this, year two was this, etc.
I think each year provides a different perspective. I don't really love the idea of life as a roller coaster. I mean, I get the analogy, but I think the breath is too short. I think the idea of playing a full round of golf And that full round of golf is, I think, also to be played with people or by yourself through that entire round is more of a better capture of what that's like. And the 5 years of F3 kind of mimics that. There are times when you can space out and kind of go through the motions. And just like in golf, you can play the first 9 holes really well, and all of a sudden 10 through 13, you're like, I don't even remember what happened because you're kind of in a different place. Well, that can happen in F3 too. Your posts are up and you're dialed in, and then all of a sudden you just find yourself going through the motions. Some of your guys you'd run around with are maybe less present or maybe absent due to their life experience that's going on. And so I think the most important part is just consistency and knowing that you have to get over your own ego if you step away to come back. Like it's never not there. It's you that removes yourself, whether it be emotionally or physically, and knowing that you can re-engage emotionally and physically, getting back involved and still having the same effect, but you're just different and change over time. So I think it changes, but I think that, it's what some of these guys have been here 7, 8, 9, 10 years. If you allow yourself to understand that it's a growth process and it's outcomes over results, growth over outcomes, you can remain diligent in it and also engaged in it. And I think that's really important to kind of understand. But it takes opening yourself up to new relationships, going to different sites, trying different things, meeting different people. It takes some of that openness and maturity to kind of navigate those. And it's usually pretty rewarding.
I think it's leaders like yourself, at least for F3 Omaha, that have kept the F3 Omaha workouts consistently there for everyone, even when individuals aren't as consistent with their
Yeah,
postings.
I appreciate that. I think so too. Yeah.
Which actor would play you in a biopic movie about your F3 journey?
Oh man, actor would play me in a biopic movie about my F3 journey. Um, I kind of think I'm a kind of a unique personality because I balance a lot of humor with my passion and sensitivity. So, you know, I think Vince Vaughn might do a good job. I think
That's a good one.
I think he, I think, he's in his 50s now. However, you've seen him in various roles, but he provides a sense of humor and his quick wit. But there's a number of roles where he has some serious elements where you made a good point the other day where like some comedians play serious roles and some serious actors or serious minded actors play a funny role. And I think that I made me think about, am I more of a funnier guy that's being serious at times, or am I more of a serious guy that integrates humor and fun in my daily life? And I think I'm probably more the latter. I have a pretty seriousness in terms of how I think and deliberate, but I don't take myself too seriously in the sense that I can't, I find it very easy to laugh at myself, admit where I'm wrong, but also um, you want me on your side. I'd want to be on your side if on the right side of history if I'm trying to go after something. I'm not going to be laissez-faire or like, oh, what will be. I don't really live that way. I never really understood that in sense of, well, just let the wind blow and I'll just kind of follow the wind. That sometimes you have to go against the wind to get where you're going.
I think you're a good reader of the room. I think you could have a whole cafeteria where you're just cracking jokes the whole time and having fun. But then if you had a time where a guy had a serious issue going on with his life, you could be
Oh,
serious the whole time too. So
oh, for sure. Yeah. Like I think that's really important as men, knowing how to engage and recognizing where somebody's at so you can reach them personally. And that massively increases your effectiveness. But that's really kind of self-serving in a sense. But really what you're doing is you're trying to provide what that person needs. And that's not manipulation. That's just dexterity. And I think that's really, really important to take a breath at wherever you're at and being present in the situation to be able to kind of do what the situation needs in order to help or serve.
we always hear the praise of F3 and its impact on men's lives. What could F3 be doing even better?
One thing I think that we do not harp enough of, and I think the conversations need to be had more about it, And I'll use the example of Queen Service, and this is no slight to Queen Service, but or the people that try it. In my mind, you shouldn't be a multiple winner of Queen Service unless the bar is continually moving up. That bar shouldn't swing back to your old habit, and then all of a sudden you need a Queen
Mhm.
Service to get back in the swing of things to kind of go to to re-engineer yourself. The re-engineering should happen, and now you've created another new floor.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't talk enough about or promote enough about the new birth or the new birth of your new self. When a caterpillar becomes a butterfly, and this might sound a little woo-woo, they go through a transformation entirely. That butterfly will never be a caterpillar ever again. And I think we as men need to understand when we reach levels of growth, that former self has died. Is it part of us? It is internally, but it should not be part of us in terms of physically. And so we know what it used to be like, but that is no longer who we are. And that's a conscious decision that we have to make. So when we do make these leaps and bounds, whether it be physical, emotional, mental, or spiritual, we have to now embody and fully know that is our new self. And if we don't do that, then we're continuously doing the yo-yo again that's talked about in Free to Lead all the time. And God calls us to be renewed in Him as a Christian. Well, you don't just, and we are always, we're always sinful in nature, but we always must repent. But we always must build on that, not subverting that and just going back into our old habits. We can continually get better and reestablishing that floor. I think is something that we need to talk about. So the ceiling continually raises, the floor continually comes up, and so we just keep leveling up as men, and that ultimately changes the world, from the bottom up. So that's what I think is really important that we don't talk enough about.
You mentioned Queen Service, but I think that ties into this week's topic a lot that we're covering at the Crucible, which is Jester. I think you could say pretty much the exact same thing for that topic as well.
Yeah, 100%. I think the biggest thing with gestures, you have to be 100% honest, not only what your gesture is, or maybe you have two, but I would be willing to bet one actually is a accelerator to the other. So you got to find out which one is lighting the fire for the other one. So if you have, if for one thing, I'm a emotional eater. If I'm stressed, I want to eat, right? So so obviously there's something there that I have to figure out what's the trigger for the secondary and tertiary effects. Understanding what that gesture does and understanding the secondary and tertiary effects of that gesture, it allows you to be more aware and catch yourself so you don't succumb to that gesture's power or that influence you have. And I think that's really, really important, because as we get older, we get really, really good at either hiding, denying, or revisiting, the gesture in certain ways that we convince ourselves is different than how we were doing before, but it's still having the same impact. And so I think it's really important that we understand and are fully truthful and honest and open to be accountable about it. And hey, this is a problem for me. How can we fix it? Or how can we put it into submission? Is probably not done alone.
Very good insight there. Now that you've had 5 years to look back on, what has been the biggest F3 impact on your life?
Well, one, it's a community and an access to men I wouldn't normally an access to. So the fact that it's consistently there, regardless of whether I want to show up, is a huge is a huge thing to think about my brain. I know that there's somebody that's posting every day, whether I'm one of them or not. And I think that allows for the opportunity for consistency to happen, and it allows the flock to kind of pull you along when you're not in the front. You know, the idea is, when birds fly, especially ducks and geese specifically when they fly in the V, that there's not always the same bird at the front of the V. They're rotating around, right? And so that concept holds true in life too. Sometimes you actually don't have the strength to continue on the front, but by drafting off the acceleration of other men, you in turn will also accelerate. It'll just be at variance of speeds. And so I think that's really important. That's what F3 I think provides is it provides the wedge into hardship, challenge, struggle, or against the grain, but allows you to be pulled by the group. But sometimes you will be called to lead as well, whether it be for one or many, based upon the situation that arises.
Being a deep thinker, can you imagine what your life would look like if you never had F3 in it?
I've been a very much kind of guy that beats to my own drum. That's probably noticeable by most people that know me well. Is like I have I've thick skin. Even though I wear my heart on my sleeve, I'm not gonna let things harden me down for long. I used to tell my wife, success or failure has 24 hours. Now, when you get older and you have more life experience, sometimes it's a little longer than 24 hours, mainly for challenges that can arise that they can weigh you down for longer periods of time. However, I couldn't look at myself in the mirror, regardless if I was an F3 or not, for very long without getting into action. My mind doesn't work in the sense of wallowing or victimhood. I have a acute sense of awareness, like I have to get out of this mindset, or I have to get into a different place mentally or physically to be able to move forward again. And so that would be done whether F3 is there or not. I think as men, ideally it's with other men. If you want to go fast, you go alone. If you want to go far, you go with others. There are times where that pivot has to happen fast and alone because you're leaving the men that were surrounding you how you got to that one spot. So that would be an instance where you're doing it alone in the human form. But as my faith has grown, I keep a Bible on my desk. You dive into the Word and or in prayer and your thoughts and meditation, like those things are not done alone. You're with, I'm with my faith and with the Lord that is still guiding me, and it makes things a lot easier. It makes things in terms of moving forward. And F3 does provide a community to be able to have those other people around you that think similarly. But I think I would always try to gravitate towards similar groups or trying to find men that are equally yoked to kind of go through this thing we call life. So I think it's important. But not all men have F3. And I think there's a lot of successful men out there without it. So it obviously can be done, but it definitely, I've never heard anybody say they've regretted going to F3 or engaging it or learning something from it. So it's obviously a huge propellant for sure.
It's been about a month. I've had the Bible by me when I work from home, and there's something comforting about having that book right next to you all day long.
I think so too. I think there's some energy to it. I think it opens up some conversations that you may never have had. I had one the other day where somebody came in my office. I was like, "Oh, what's that book?" I'm like, "That's a good book, my man." Like, "Oh, I'm like the Bible," and he's like, "Oh, you're a Christian?" I'm like, "Yeah." And he's like, "That's awesome that you have that out there." That never would have happened if we had not. So now that door is opened up to a conversation down the road that we've had. I had a sales rep come in, saw a Marine emblem on it. All of a sudden, there's a conversation about military, and then it leads to faith. Like so, just by having it out, there's a presence that wasn't in the room before it not being out.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
I love it. Yeah.
so I think that's really important. And then I asked myself, and this is something I don't really know entirely, but working through is like, if our goal every day is pick up the shield of God, like how do people know that you're a Christian just by meeting you? Other than just say, oh, yeah, he seems like a good dude. Well, beyond that, well, like, okay, there's something about him that might be a little bit different. And now we're trying to fine tune those skills and those traits in yourself that people can kind of attach and say, oh, I think, no, if I would be willing to bet, I bet he's a man of God. He fears the Lord. Or, you want that to start to perpetuate and grow. And also, that's how I want to lead my family. So if I'm not doing it in all facets of life, you just can't pick it up when you walk through the front door of your house.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Last question. You recently told me you've gone through Q Source end to end 2 times. Did you not get it the first time, or are you a slow
Yeah.
learner?
Well, I had the book upside down the first time, and it just read different. I was having a hard time understanding it. No, I've been through it 2 times fully. Been through it 3 or 4 times, probably just. And I finally purchased the book for the first time, but it's a very it's written in a way that is written for us, not to us, just like maybe the Bible or other great literary documents are that are, the quote that comes to mind is a man never steps in the same river twice,
Mm.
and so you are different each time based upon your experience you're reading this book. So things are going to come at you differently, but you're also able to provide perspective on things that you've already learned through that book. So it just allows, um, it's always worth revisiting. And most guys that have the book physically, you can see it's been turned through if they've been engaging in Q source a number of times or on a periodic basis, or they're getting things, they're drawing on things, and it's very helpful for conversation. And it just allows us to have a lot more breadth of knowledge about kind of what is a man and how we can kind of start to mold and fine tune our own values, especially in like the middle act of life, as we're trying to be leaders of our family and our community and our church and within F3.
Well, you heard it from a Q Source veteran and a veteran F3. L.P.C, I appreciate you joining me today. Come out to the Crucible and get a little L.P.C beat down and Q Source for yourself. Thanks a lot, buddy.
Absolutely. We'll see you guys. Have a great Friday. Talk to you next Wednesday at the Crucible.
All right, F3 Omaha, it's closing time on this episode. Next week's Q, we have Schnitzel at the Crucible. Can't wait for you guys to hear that interview. Next week's P is Quadrant 1.5M, the transformative relationship between a man and his wife. Can't wait for that topic. See you next week, everybody.